to the What Bitcoin Did podcast.
Hi there, how are you all doing? Welcome to the What Bitcoin Did podcast, which is brought to you by Kraken. And today I've got a follow-up with Christian Decker from Blockstream, going into a little more detail about some of the cool tech coming for Lightning. But before that, I do have a message from my show sponsors. So first up, Kraken, the only exchange I now use for trading Bitcoin. It's the place I do all my buys and sells at the end of the month when I have to settle the books for What Bitcoin Did, because sometimes I invoice in Bitcoin and sometimes I get invoiced in Bitcoin. So I've started using Kraken now. I love it. It's super easy. And when I balance my books and I do the withdrawal, money's back in my bank account within 24 hours. So that's really cool. I've loved the experience of that. And I'm also going to be catching up on the phone with their lead product designer to talk about the UX improvements, which are going to be coming to Kraken, which is super exciting. And I'm also a massive fan of everything they're doing with security. And I can't wait to catch up with their chief security officer, Nick Pococo. We're discussing some ideas about adding some tutorials about personal security on the website. So Kraken, simply the best crypto exchange out there, the best place to buy and sell your Bitcoin. If you want to support them and support everything they're doing, then head over to kraken.com, which is kraken.com. That is kraken.com, which is kraken.com. And also BlockFi, wealth management with your crypto, where you can earn interest or borrow USD. You can grow your wealth and do more with your cryptocurrency holdings. They've got two products now, two products that we've been talking about this year. They've got their crypto back loans and their crypto interest accounts, which I am now using. I deposited 20% of my Bitcoin into the interest account. I wanted to test it. I wanted to see how it works. And I'm looking forward to the next few days when I get my first statement. So that'll be cool. I'll be reporting back on that, explaining what happened there. I'm also off to New York next week, so I'm going to be catching up with the team. They've got so many other cool things that are going to be coming this year, so I can't wait to tell you about that. If you want to check out BlockFi, head over to blockfi.com, which is blockfi.com. That is blockfi.com, which is blockfi.com. Okay, so on to my interview with Christian, and a big thanks to him for coming back on. If you didn't listen to the last one, it's definitely worth checking out. It's in the show notes. And when I did that interview, I had this weird, annoying eye infection. So the whole time I was interviewing, I was just sat there holding a tissue over my streaming eye, which was really annoying and really frustrating. And I managed about 40 minutes, and I wanted to go longer. So I spoke to Christian and said, look, will you come back on? I want a bit more detail on the tech. And he was more than willing to do it. So that was very cool to Christian. So we get into a bit more of the Lightning tech that's coming. We talk about splicing, we talk about Neutrino, Eltoo, Watchtowers, channel factories, to name a few things. And yet, whilst I didn't understand it all, Christian does a great job explaining it to me. So that's very cool. And I've also made a personal commitment, because people keep saying to me, you're not technical, and I admit I'm not technical. So I've made a personal commitment. And over the coming months, I'm going to be working on improving my technical knowledge. I'm going to be trying to understand a bit more about how Bitcoin works in the background. So yeah, that should be fun. Might be reaching out to a few more technical people to give me a hand there. But yeah, I hope you enjoy this interview with Christian. If you've got any questions about it, then do feel free to reach out to me. And if you are enjoying the podcast and you want to support what I do, then head over to my website, whatbitcoindid.com, click on the support section. And I need to say a big thank you to my top tier patron, Rise Wallet, a new way into Bitcoin. No signups, just scan the card and you are holding Bitcoin. Find out more by heading over to risewallet.com. Okay, so on to the interview. As ever, if you've got any questions, reach out to me. My email address is hello@whatbitcoindid.com.
How's the King of Bedford doing?
I'm doing okay. Very, very strange day. You've obviously seen the news, right? That Binance have delisted Bitcoin SV.
Yeah, just saw that a few minutes ago. I was walking home and I saw people saying goodbye to Bitcoin SV, and I was like, what's happening there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm struggling to take it all in. It's obviously a very cool move by CZ, and hopefully it's the first of many. But it's that weird thing that's like, now he's done that, will people think they can pressure him to remove everything? And I'm not sure how healthy that is myself, but I still think it's cool it's happened.
Yeah, no, it definitely is a dangerous first to set, yeah.
But this is a particularly terrible fork of the coin.
Yeah. But as you mentioned, it still is a precedent, right?
I think we can separate Bitcoin SV, Craig Wright and Calvin Ayres and say, no, this is definitely different. This is super scammy because of the point that he keeps fraudulently claiming he's Satoshi, validating it as a better form of Bitcoin. I think it deserves special treatment.
Yeah, that's true. I always said that if Craig Wright turns out to be Satoshi, I will leave Bitcoin immediately. So far, that's not been the case. Yeah.
Well, he's left Bitcoin himself, really, and done
Yeah,
Bitcoin
right.
SV anyway. So, of course, he's not Satoshi. I mean, look, the easiest thing in the world to prove it. Actually, I don't think it actually proves it, but with everything he does to claim he is and prove he is, if he just moved coins, that would be a big signal. I mean, I still don't think it proves it, but that's the biggest signal he can give, and he doesn't do it because he can't, and he perpetuates this minor mystery that he may be because of that. And no, hopefully I'm going to end up in court with him, and we'll figure this out.
This is way more interesting than Game of Thrones, in my opinion.
Do you know? I haven't watched it yet. I've recorded it. Have you watched the first one?
Not yet, but I mean, this is the real power struggle here.
Yeah. Well, listen, look, thanks for coming back on. This is really useful. I really enjoyed our first interview in Boston. I don't think anyone could tell that I was on a table holding a tissue with my eyes streaming, which was an awful way to do it, but it was great to do it. And following that, I've got more questions, really, because let me explain what's happened. So I came to doing this Lightning month knowing it was new, wanting to learn more about it, but I was treating it like a finished product. Even though I knew more text to come, I still was treating it like a finished product and finding things when I was using that I didn't like too much and problems, but I think that's totally wrong. And I think it was Nick Carter who said to me, he said, look, if you look at Bitcoin now, you know, if you buy Bitcoin on the Cash App, that's an entirely different experience than you did in 2010. And yeah, so you've talked about this interesting tech that's coming. So I think it's a good follow-up to start talking about that. So the first thing I want to ask you about is splicing. Because you talked to me about splicing in the first interview, and I went and read up on it, and I didn't fully understand it. So I want you to talk about it in the most simplest way possible. If I get lost, I'm going to ask you again. But the impression you gave me is that you could potentially have a wallet whereby there is no separation between what is Bitcoin and Lightning Bitcoin. And when you choose to make a payment, it will find the best and cheapest option, which sounds great. Where I struggled with that is there are different formats for Lightning and Bitcoin addresses. And therefore, I was struggling to understand how that would work. So the floor is yours. Tell me about splicing.
Okay, so for the second part of your question, basically, is we do have different addresses and different sort of interactions to get payments from A to B in Lightning and in Bitcoin. So the simple answer is basically that the Lightning invoices can encode a fallback Bitcoin address. So if we can't perform a payment on Lightning, or it turns out to be uneconomical, then we can just use that address and do an on-chain payment instead. And so have this downgrade of protocol in the background without having to ask a user, hey, can you maybe ask your vendor for a new address because, well, this doesn't work. We can just give that information with the invoice itself and then do a downgrade as we need it. For splicing itself, that's a bit more complicated, and I usually start my explanations with this usual setup that I've also done last time, right? The Lightning channel is nothing else than us putting like a few bucks on a table between us, and then deciding on how to split these funds. And now, if I only have money on the table and I don't have any more in my pocket to do off-chain payments, then the natural way of doing this would basically be, hey, I need my money off-chain. I need my money on-chain. Let's close this channel. I get my share of this channel. I can then go and pay somebody else on-chain, and we can then meet again and open a new channel, right? So what we could do there is basically we close the channel, I do my on-chain payment, and then we reopen this channel again. And that's very inefficient, right? That's 3 on-chain transactions just to perform one on-chain transaction and reestablish the old state. So what we can do is we can smash this close, transfer, and reopen transaction into one single transaction. And so what we do is basically I come to you and say, hey, I need to pay this I need to pay Amazon for $5 and I don't have any funds left in my pocket. Let's pay this out of our channel. And then we collaboratively build this closed transaction that is then used to close the channel, send $5 off towards Amazon, and then reopen this channel at once. So this basically combines these three transactions into one transaction that closes, sends off, and reopens the channel. And now the interesting part is that the reason why we put the money on the table in the first place is so that neither of us can run away with the funds and the other one holds the bag. If we combine these transactions into a single transaction, then there is no opportunity for any of us to run away in some intermediate state, and we can continue working on the newly reestablished channel right away without having to wait for it to confirm. So what we can do is we can do this in a zero downtime scenario where the channel remains operational throughout this operation, but we still can splice out some funds to a third party. And then there's the counterparty, which is called Splicing, but it's basically just the mirror image of splice out.
So that's like a scenario. Say I've got a channel open with you and I've got $15 capacity on my side and I want to release $5 for Amazon. So that's in that scenario.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I just want to go back a step. When you talked about the downgrading of addresses, that's all automatically done, right? But at the same time, if I'm trying to make a payment via Lightning and it chooses to downgrade, the payment's going to take longer.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean that's definitely a kink that we need to work out in the UX because, as you mentioned, it is also downgrade of the user experience. So you might get a pop-up and say, hey, we can't do this immediately. Shall we try again, or shall we just go the slow way around?
Right, but you don't imagine it's going to say, would you like to pay via Lightning or via base chain? You don't think that's going to be the option stated?
I hope we don't go that way, that you are presented by default with both options, because, well, one is that it becomes really really strange for users to have to select a payment method when they basically have when they were expecting to do a Lightning payment and suddenly, hey, this guy also accepts on-chain payments. Do you instead want to have a slow on-chain payment?
So it'd be offered when it's a better scenario. For example, let's say in the future, it's quite a big payment, right? So large payments on Lightning can actually be more expensive than on-chain, right? Because they charge in a different way. So it may come up as an option that says, look, if you were to do this as an on-chain payment, it will take longer, but it's going to cost you less. Would you like to do that?
That's definitely something that we need to consider at some point. Currently, we sort of have the luxury of having small payments only. So we sort of deferred those design decisions for a later point in time.
How does everybody ensure they have a fallback on-chain address? Would that be part of wallet design, or is that protocol design? Where does that happen?
That's pretty much the wallet design of the implementation you're using. Practically every single implementation, be that C Lightning, LND, or Eclair, all have built-in wallet that will accept on-chain payments as well as Lightning payments. The reason for that is that we need to actually have the ability of receiving on-chain funds in order to get funds to create channels with in the first place. So that's sort of something that we're currently doing anyway. So it's not that big of an issue currently. It's just not exposed as being a classical Bitcoin on-chain wallet currently.
Right, okay. And then if we move back to where you were talking about, say we have a channel between us, I want to release some funds to make a payment. Is that something I communicate with you, or do I just do it and you're not aware? Like I can just release some funds out of it in that single transaction?
No, that actually requires a lot of interaction, and we are in the we are currently specifying the what kind of interaction that needs, but you will have to cooperatively create that transaction, that close and reopen transaction with the splice in or splice out with your counterparty as well. So you need to have interaction with your peers.
It sounds kind of an odd scenario that I would want to perhaps release $5 from a channel to go and make an on-chain payment with Amazon. I guess the example just sounds odd.
Yeah, I struggle to see Amazon accepting Bitcoin anytime soon, but it was the first thing that came to mind. Yes, but we sort of need to have this flexibility in keeping on-chain payments a viable option, as well as Lightning, because people will be operating really slowly to this, right? I mean, somebody congratulated one of the exchanges today for implementing SegWit finally.
Finally.
We need to have an easy way to upgrade and downgrade funds that we have on chain or funds that we have off chain, and this flexibility is what is needed to make this to get the network started in the first place. So the counterpart is, of course, Splicing, where you have on-chain funds and you'd like to top up your channels, and that's sort of the same mechanism, but it's upgrading and downgrading your funds from off-chain to on-chain and back again, basically.
Yeah, so I understand the reason why you'd want it. I guess what I would need to think about is the economics of it, because, an on-chain transaction still could be $1, $2, maybe $5 in the future. So it really is only going to make sense maybe in a scenario where you've got quite a large amount within a channel.
Well, that obviously depends on the fees that you are paying and the amount. I'm not really good at making any predictions in that direction. But if you compare that to having just on-chain funds, I mean, that dollar in transaction fees you're going to pay anyway. Now you can try to pay it through Lightning, and maybe it succeeds, and then you've won something, or you can then drop back on chain, and you haven't lost that much compared to keeping your funds on chain all the time, right?
Yeah.
So it's just extending the reach of the funds that you have towards applications that currently aren't really doable, and you probably wouldn't fall back if you're trying to transfer a 5 cent amount and the on-chain fees turn out to be like $1.
Right, okay, and that comes to another point that's come up in a couple of my interviews that I've been trying to figure out, is that if you're going to start using Lightning and you've got a channel open, you have to use it a few times to justify the economics of it. Mm-hmm. If you were to open up a Lightning channel and do one payment, you might as well have gone on chain unless you were desperate to make a very quick purchase.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, this is the importance of selecting and whom to open a channel with, and selecting the size of a channel. It's definitely not trivial, because, well, the big savings come from you using a channel over and over again, and possibly in both directions, right? So it definitely is not an easy solution. It's not an easy problem to solve, and we are working on ways to help users select, or maybe even auto select some of these parameters, whom to open a channel with and what capacity to assign, with the entire effort of creating autopilots. But I wouldn't say it's a solved problem as of now. And if you were to do just one-off payments, I would definitely recommend you stick to on-chain payments, because, well, it's just easier.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I've started to realize, is that we are so early, but if you consider where Lightning may be in a couple of years, where, we'll all have probably a few channels open, maybe one of those is connected to a hub of significant size, that actually it's going to be less of an issue. The problem is that it's still very early and there aren't enough people with enough channels open connected to each other with enough capacity on the network.
Yeah.
But this is just like a...
It's bootstrapping the network, basically.
Exactly.
It's one of the classical problems in game theory, is that if you have a network and the actual value comes from the network being completed, it's really hard to incentivize people to actually go and create that network. So we have a whole section of game theory that is only tackles the issue of network formation games, and those are hard. Now we are in a lucky position that we have a lot of enthusiast users that are willing to dig in and start learning and invest the time to actually the time and money to actually build this network from the ground up. And hopefully we will get there, that we end up with a fully usable network that connects every single person in the world with any other person in the world. But I wouldn't say it's a given that this is actually how it's going to work out. And there's a lot of more work needed, and lots of people investing more time in it.
Yeah, and that's another part of it. Made me realize, look, I've got my custom nodes actually behind me here that's not set up. I need to set it up. I need to open some channels. And I think the enthusiasts actually have to be part of it to help with the bootstrapping, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So one thing that came up that I didn't realize at the time, when I had my Blue wallet set up, I didn't realize I had a custodial wallet. And I'll be honest, the user experience of having a custodial wallet was great. It solved so many problems for me. But when I interviewed Jack Mallers, he was very, very against custodial wallets because he thinks it's misleading people because it goes back to a not your keys, not your Bitcoin, which I totally agree with. But for the sake of a few dollars here or there to test in a wallet, I wasn't too bothered. Where are you with the whole custodial versus non-custodial on Lightning?
I used to be quite strict on custodial wallets are the devil's work, but I've since come around. I would say custodial wallets are a great option for onboarding people that do not have the luxury of investing loads of times and loads of money, and maybe cannot run their own node. And I know this is heresy in the whole space, but there are such people. Ever since I tried explaining Lightning to my parents and my brother, I now know that there's people that just don't care. And for those people, a custodial wallet is definitely a good onboarding experience. It gives them a stake in the system as such. What I do think is always a good thing to have is give people the option of then upgrading to a more sovereign solution, right? Give people the option of taking your custodial wallet and just export it to a full node and have it run there from there on. So I think there's a certain fluidity in your wallet choices as well, right? If you choose a wallet initially because it makes stuff just easy, right? It just clicks, it works. Somebody else is taking care of it for you. Then why not? I mean, that's a good user experience, and it also amortizes some of the work that we as developers or the blockchain as such has to do. But we should always give users the option of then going and digging in and sort of learning about this stuff and then maybe experimenting with it. So I'm definitely not opposed to custodial wallets. I think they're a good onboarding experience, but we should also make it much easier to have the sovereign version in a much easier way as well.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it really comes down to UX again of actually signposting and letting people realize what they're using, whether it's custodial or non-custodial, and what it means. I also don't think many people are going to be getting themselves set up with nodes like a Casa node or a Nodal. I just think whilst it's cool, and I love the idea of everyone having a little box in their house, which is their identity into a network and their ability to hold and manage their Bitcoin and their Lightning Bitcoin, I actually think for a lot of people, that might be a step too far. And I think for some people, having something like a Nano or a Trezor is great, but perhaps a mobile wallet. So I talked to somebody about Neutrino. Actually, I talked to the Blue Wallet guys about Neutrino, and it seems like that's going to be a big step for some people to be able to, have a non-custodial mobile solution.
Yeah, it will definitely reduce the need for running a full node, a full Bitcoin node, because you can now have the Bitcoin backend sort of be a very lightweight system that doesn't have to verify the entire chain and so on and so forth. That's definitely a great step towards being more open and being more easier to set up. But there's a few other solutions as well. So my favorite solution is, everybody sort of has a friend in their surroundings that will sort of dig into all of this, and maybe they can run a custodial solution for his friends. My usual go-to example is the Home Hub, where a family shares a full node, and just one of us has to really maintain it and operate it. The other one is that between fully custodial and fully decentralized versions, there's always a sort of a different shades of gray, right? So one of the things that I want to eventually implement as well is having a sort of headless mode for C Lightning, where all the key operations are done on your phone, and you just have a small you just have the C Lightning daemon that does not have any access to funds and does not have access to keys run on a hosted infrastructure. So you still you use your phone to sort of sign off on anything that happens on the channel, and the C Lightning daemon that is hosted by a third party is basically there to sort of keep it up to date and just keep it running and monitor your channels and so on and so forth.
Somebody was saying to me, that I think it was the Blue Wallet guy, that they want Neutrino to be part of the Bitcoin Core protocol. Is that something that's planned? They seem to imply that relies on it being included, but there's no kind of timeline or confirmation of when that will or might happen.
I can't really speak to what Bitcoin Core does, but it would definitely be nice to sort of have support for it, at least in Bitcoin as well. I think the major pushback currently is that it sort of makes it easier for people not to run full nodes, which is the whole point of it, right? These discussions usually tend to be quite long, and I really like the idea of Neutrino. Rosebeef was really clever in proposing Neutrino by making it optional. So we've talked about UTXO commitments for a long time, and sort of all of them ended up in this sand bunker and never got out of there, because they needed to have this commitment to the UTXO set. And Neutrino came along and was like, we can have this separate structure. We could commit it, but it's not central. So by making it this optional addendum, you basically sidestep this whole issue of everybody coming in, and this starting to discuss how to optimize it even further. So hopefully Neutrino will make it in. I don't know what the current state is, but I'd actually like to work with Neutrino as well.
Next up, I talked to Christian more about some of the tech that's coming up for Lightning. But before that, I've got a message from my show sponsors. So let's talk about Dropbit, my new sponsor, the wallet I've been using. You know, historically, I haven't used a mobile wallet that much, and I don't know why. I think it's because most of my main Bitcoin transactions have been big ticket items where I've been invoicing or being invoiced. I've never really used it for those kind of smaller payments. But now I've got the Dropbit wallet and I've got it on my phone and I've got some Bitcoin in there. I've been playing with it and it's super useful. It's super cool, actually. I've been using it as a tipping service, or I've been using it to send Bitcoin to other people. And that's really the goal. They want to make it easier for people just to be sending bits of Bitcoin back to each other. So I'm going to have my phone with me in New York when I'm at Consensus. I'm going to have Bitcoin in it. I'm going to be using it to give Bitcoin to people, which should be fun. It should be quite a cool experience. But yeah, definitely check it out. It is without doubt the best UX I've seen on a Bitcoin wallet. Do you know what? It's one of the best UXs I've seen on any app. It really is super cool. I really like working with the team. Going to hopefully be meeting up with them at New York and hanging out with them. But if you want to check it out, it's on Android and iPhone. just head over to dropbit.app, which is dropbit.app. That is dropbit.app, which is dropbit.app. Also, talking about BlockFi again, as I mentioned, I'm going to be heading out to New York next week. I'm going to be catching up with the guys, going to be finding out everything that's coming. They, for me, are defining the future of crypto and banking, changing the way the legacy systems work and introducing new services. And they've already got 2 super cool products. The first one is their crypto-backed loans. It's not something I've used because it's not something I've needed, but I've spoke to other people and they're very happy with the service. But I am using their crypto interest accounts. I've got 20% of my Bitcoin in there earning interest for me. I've got my first statement coming in the next few days, so I'm really excited about that, and I'll feed back to you. But if you want to check them out, head over to blockfi.com, which is blockfi.com. That is blockfi.com, which is blockfi.com. And as I've said in every advert, I'm heading to New York next week. I'm going to be at Consensus. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to meet up with a few of you. If you're heading out there and you want to hang out, you want to meet up, then let me know. And I'm really looking forward to the event. I'm looking forward to some of the speakers. Specifically, I can't wait to see John Carvalho talk. I can't wait to see Christian Decker talk, who was on this episode. And I can't wait to see Alex Gladstein speak. There's some great Bitcoiners there. If you're heading out to Consensus, then let me know. If you're not, why? Why are you not going to be in New York next week? There's so much happening. There's always the parties. I found like last year at Consensus, it was just a great way to network and meet new people. And I've made some friends there last year that I've spoke to and stayed in touch with all year. So it's a great place to be in New York during the event. If you do want to head to Consensus, I've got an offer from the team there. I'm working with them because I'm going to be doing a show on stage. So if you want to get yourself a ticket, head over to www.consensus2019.com, consensus with a U. So that is CONSENSUS 2019.com, and use the discount code BitcoinDid3000. That is consensus2019.com, and use the voucher code BitcoinDid300. So something else that's come up when I talk to Peter Risen, he talks about sub-dust levels of Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And he talks about the fact that if you've got sub-dust levels, you can't close a channel. Well, you can, but everything is lost in an on-chain transaction. Therefore, the use of channels within Lightning is dependent on whatever the base chain on-chain fees are.
So there's definitely a point of truth in there. And that is that we can't really create outputs that are sub-dust. Now, there is no real connection between dust and fees, though. Dust is a fixed parameter that is fixed on the protocol level, whereas fees fluctuate depending on the demand of block space that we have in the network. So I don't see that connection with fees. I do, however, see that there is an issue that we can't create sub-dust outputs. Now, we actually use millisatoshis internally as a unit of account, which also can't be represented in on the Bitcoin blockchain, right? And dust is the dust limit is even higher with 546 satoshis, below which you can't really create an output. Now, I'm calling this as a unit of account because that's exactly what it is. It's not the minimum amount we can pay out, but it's the minimum amount we can keep track in our channel. So if I were to do let's say 601 Satoshi transfers to you, I could all of a sudden represent that as an output that can go to you, right? So we keep track of amounts that are not representable on chain, but by aggregating them, we suddenly have amounts that we can represent on chain. And the usual hand wave argument for what happens to the funds that we do not reach this sort of maturity level, such that they can be represented on chain. Well, those are usually so small that you shouldn't really care about them. I'm not sure what 500 Satoshis will get you today, but it's sort of nothing. Mm-hmm. So the reason why we have this unit of account that is smaller than what we can represent is that by aggregating them, these amounts actually matter, but the individual transfer does not. So yeah, that's the main argument, basically, that if you do enough payments, all of a sudden these matter. And if you don't do enough payments, then, well, it's just not worth keeping track of it. Keeping in mind that the dust limit was introduced in order to sort of put a limit onto the cost that individual funds can have. If we didn't have the dust limit, all of a sudden, well, we would be paying more to store this UTXO entry rather than what is actually represented here.
Right, okay. Another thing you mentioned in our interview, again, which I still didn't fully understand, you talked about Eltoo.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about that again?
So Eltoo is an alternative for us to make sure that we don't renege on our agreement, right? So when we open a channel, we put some money on it, and then we start negotiating between the two of us how to split this money. And at any point in time, we do have a valid transaction that sort of would enforce this agreement between us on chain. So if one of us disappears, then you could, if I just go away or I die, then you can take the last transaction that I gave to you, and you can go to the blockchain and say, hey, dear blockchain, this is our latest state. Please give me my money back. Now, since only at this last stage the blockchain is involved, we might have superseded different versions of the state along the way, right? So let's say I have an initial state where I have $10 and you have 0, and then we go and that means that I have a transaction that gives me $10 and you 0, and you have the same as a copy, right? And then and then we transfer something, and then we have 5 and 5. And so I have a transaction that gives me $5 and you $5, and you have a copy of that. Now, the problem is that if you just go away, then I might be tempted to just use the old one, right? So, which gives me 10 after all, right? So we need to have a mechanism for updating this in a way where the blockchain can sort of judge whether this is the last state or not. And the usual way we do this is by the court of the blockchain basically opening a trial and saying, hey, I've heard this from Christian, and now you have 24 hours to say your part of the story, and then blockchain will make this decision which one is the one to go for. Now, Lightning, the way we do this is basically the transaction that the proof that you show to the blockchain is basically stealing all of my funds, right? So that's what we call a penalty or a punishment. And Eltoo is a bit different. So with Eltoo, this ensuring that only the last state is actually enforceable is done by you then coming along and saying, hey, no, we agreed on something different than what Christian just said. Here's a newer state where I get 5 and you get 5. And what the blockchain then does is basically just say, okay, Peter's is now the latest state that I've seen, and I will enforce that. So what we do is basically my transaction made it in, but the effect of me getting $10 and you getting 0 was not activated yet. You had these 24 hours to show your transaction, and now we ratcheted it up a bit, and now we are at the state where you get 5 and I get 5. Now I could come along again, but I don't have anything newer, and so this will be the state that is finally settled. So the difference between the penalty mechanism and Eltoo is basically that in the penalty mechanism, any old state will result in me getting punished, but you also having to keep in your back pocket all of the punishments that you might need. Whereas with Eltoo, what we do is basically, instead of punishing, we override the effects. And that can be done in such a way that all you ever need to remember is the last state itself. So you don't have to keep for the entire history of our interaction. You don't need to have something matching whatever I could do, but it's just you spray out this information of, hey, this is the last state, and it will just magically override whatever I did while misbehaving, so to speak.
How much of this stuff do you have to consciously think about in using Lightning? Or are you explaining something that is automated?
Oh, this should all be automated. And it is for the current implementations as well.
Yeah, because these things are often explained as if you and I are making decisions together and I have 24
Yes.
hours. And it's sometimes I'm thinking, this is too much to think about for me.
Oh yeah, I mean that's also something that is often misunderstood, is that that I as an operator need to understand the protocol to have the correct reactions. It's more like I run some software, it watches the blockchain on my behalf, and I don't have to make a conscious effort to maintain the state. And that also comes back when people say that, yes, but Lightning, you have to be online 24/7. That's not exactly true. If you have set the parameters accordingly, you can be offline for a week, and then your client will just your wallet will check in once a week and make sure that nothing bad happened, and it can go back to sleep. So it's we are automating a lot in the background, and you don't actually have to know all of this stuff as well.
Yeah. How much of that is related to Watchtowers?
So yeah, Watchtowers would be one example of software that would automatically check in with the blockchain and see if something nefarious has happened, and would then react automatically. So if you squint at it, Watchtowers are part of a wallet extracted in a separate process or a separate server somewhere, and then there's different models who operates that server as well. So many ideas about how you could implement a Watchtower currently revolve about some third party that you give this information to, and they would watch the blockchain on your behalf and then react on your behalf. But it could also be your phone that just basically is a secondary device that can check in every once in a while and see that everything is still good and go to sleep after that again.
All right, cool. So again, you mentioned it before, but I know this is something you've kind of worked on, is channel factories. And this seems to me a very important piece to come to Lightning, because one of the things I was thinking about is, every time I open a channel, I do have a cost, right? And I don't want to open lots and lots of channels, have lots of channels to manage and lots of on-chain fees to worry about. But channel factories is a potential solution to this.
So channel factories are an application of something that I like a lot, which is basically just have an off-chain contract that involves more than two parties. Basically, what happens with Lightning is that the penalty mechanism that we have in Lightning very much limits us to having two parties only. Because, well, if somebody misbehaves, then I need to know who I'm punishing. And with Eltoo or duplex micropayment channels, which is what we talked last time about, which was part of my doctoral work, does away with that limitation, right? It allows you to have a group of 5 or 10 or 15 people that all manage collaboratively some funds, and they can basically do whatever they want with these funds that they collaboratively manage. And that includes also creating channels inside of this off-chain contract. So we could, for example, be a golf club, and all the members pool their money inside of this golf club, and we could then collaboratively decide on how to move or reassign these values between ourselves. And then let's say we are in the same group of people, and now we can say, I don't want to involve the entire group of 20 people every time that we between the two of us do a transfer. So what we do is we create a channel inside of this off-chain contract, and we split off some funds that are now collaboratively managed only by the two of us. And then we can transfer back and forth between us, and then basically go back to this off-chain contract, settle our agreement in this off-chain contract, and this off-chain contract itself could eventually be settled on the blockchain. So we can start layering these off-chain contracts in a pretty neat way, where we can have temporary relationships between the two of us, or between any pair of parties in this channel factory, and just open and close channels between them in any way we want.
Are there any risks within a channel factory of a rogue, nefarious person who's part of that? Can they do anything to disrupt the channel factory?
So yes, that's one of the downsides of having these huge off-chain contracts, is basically that everybody needs to sign off on everything that happens in a channel. So if you have one party that just refuses to sign an update, then you're basically stuck, and you need to drop to the blockchain. So if somebody becomes uncooperative because they just drove into a lake and their computer just died, then we have very little other options than to basically take the last state we agreed on, basically settle that on the blockchain, and then do whatever we want from there. So you can sort of have a short interruption where this off-chain contract can't proceed anymore, but you can always back out into on-chain transactions again. And the important part here is that if let's say we have an off-chain contract between 5 of our friends, and we have created a channel between the 2 of us, and now one of these other parties disappears and becomes unresponsive, then we can drop the channel factory onto the blockchain, but the channel between the 2 of us still remains operational. Because what we do with the settlement of the off-chain contract is basically anchoring our channel between the 2 of us on the blockchain itself. So yeah, you should probably not open a channel factory with hundreds of people that you don't know if there will be around in 10 seconds time.
Yeah.
But if you have reasonable expectation that these people will stick around and sort of sign off on stuff as well, then it's a great way for you to amortize your on-chain costs as well.
So it's like a trusted part of the network, right? You have to trust the people you're creating this channel factory with.
Yeah, I would say it's a trusted group, in that you trust them not to become unresponsive and sort of making your funds unavailable until the channel factory settles. But it's not trusted as in they can actually steal your money. So it's a different trade-off, I would say.
Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to ask you about that seems kind of interesting is Submarine Swaps, the Alex Bosworth work. Because what seems kind of interesting about that is when I wanted to populate my Lightning wallet, I still had to wait for the transaction from my SegWit wallet to my Lightning wallet to confirm, and it took an hour and a half. This is a way of, you can essentially buy Lightning capacity from your wallet by doing a Submarine Swap with somebody else, right?
Yeah.
You'll probably explain it in a much better way than I've asked it.
Well, it depends on how technical we want to go.
As little technical as possible.
So it basically is a 2-legged process, right? You have one leg which is on the Lightning network, and the other leg which is on the Bitcoin network, and it uses the same mechanism that we use for end-to-end security in Lightning transfers. Namely, I promise to you that you get some funds if you can give me the result of a riddle, and you then, if you are doing if you are the party doing the swap with me, then you will basically turn around and send an on-chain payment and to me and say, hey, these funds are yours if you can tell me the secret to this riddle. And I, being the person that initiated this swap, I can then release the secret to you, grabbing my on-chain funds, and you can then turn back to me and say, hey, here's the secret. Now give me my off-chain funds. So that's basically the gist of it. It's basically just doing on-chain part of the Lightning network, and it works kind of nicely.
All right, cool. Well, listen, this is super useful. Is there anything I should have asked you about? Any other cool tech that I should be aware of?
There's
much.
way too much to describe. We're actually having our specification meeting later today, and quite a few things that I definitely want to discuss.
What's top of the list for you?
Top of the list for me is definitely the new onion construction, which we've already mentioned last time, but we got some new features with it as well. There's now the proposal by Pierre-Marie to do what's called a trampoline payment, and that basically is the major issue that we currently have with Lightning is that every endpoint needs to have a view of the network in order to find a path from himself to whoever he's trying to pay, right? And that's sort of burdensome if you run on a mobile phone. Then you whip out your mobile phone at the point of sale, and you would just want to pay, but first needs to download like a minute or 2 minutes of network view and do updates so that it can actually find a path. Now with Trampoline, what we can do is basically delegate the task of finding a path to somebody in the network. So what we do is we initiate a payment to some of our neighbors, and this neighbor, we know that this neighbor supports this protocol, and so we just need to know our direct neighborhood, and we in the payment itself we encode, hey, by the way, this is destined for Peter. Now now I don't know how to reach it, but I know how to talk to you, so I'll just delegate this pathfinding task to you, and then he will go out and find a path to Peter and perform the payment on my behalf. And that's a really cool feature that I definitely want to get in as soon as possible. That and spontaneous payments and stream payments and rendezvous routing and all of that fun stuff.
Well, I think we're probably just going to have to do this every couple of months and just get an update then.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm loving these audiences with the King of Bedford.
God, you know what? It's so embarrassing. It's just a joke. It's so embarrassing.
I'm loving it.
Well, let's see. I'm slightly worried about how this is all going to play out, but it'll be all fun. Appreciate your time again, Christian. I'm going to get this out in the next couple of days. People really enjoyed the first interview, so I'm sure they'll enjoy this as well. Thank you for coming on again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And let me know if I can help anytime.
Yeah, I might just need a hideout at some point.
Oh, Switzerland is great for hideouts.
Well, yeah, hiding people and money.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, listen, take care. Good luck with your meeting later.
Yeah, see you. Bye-bye.
Okay, so how was that? Christian is great, right? Great to get him back on the show, and I think I will probably be having him back on sooner rather than later, as I'm going to be spending some time trying to improve my technical knowledge. It's obviously becoming clear that I'm not technical enough. I've talked about this a lot. I've always felt it was useful, though. I always felt that not being technical is useful because I tend to look at things a bit different. I don't wash over things. When I find something and I get stuck, I don't understand it, I'll just say, I don't understand it. Can you explain it to me? So I always felt that was useful. I know it pisses some people off. Some people are like, oh, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. So look, I'm going to try and improve my technical skills. I'm going to firstly start with Andreas's book. And yeah, let's see how that goes. I've personally really enjoyed this Lightning Month. It's coming to a close now. I think I'm going to try and squeeze one more interview in. I want to do like a summary of my findings. And there's a bunch of things that I've really enjoyed about it. You know, my experience of using Lightning, especially with a custodial wallet, is great, but I do understand why people have an issue with that. I appreciate what Jack Mallers said about custodial wallets. I just haven't found the non-custodial experience of Lightning great yet, but maybe that will be solved in the future. Maybe there are things that are coming that will make that a better experience. I'm going to keep working on it. I'm going to keep learning about Lightning because, you know, I believe that we have to scale with Bitcoin off-chain. And I know there's been all these discussions recently on-chain and off-chain, and I do try and appreciate all sides. But for me, even as a non-technical person, it just feels like off-chain is the way to do it. So yes, I'm going to be improving my technical knowledge. I'm going to be keeping an eye on Lightning. I'm going to be doing more interviews in the future. Just because we've done this Lightning month doesn't mean it ends there. Anyway, if you've got any feedback, you can reach out to me. And listen, if you want to support the show, you can join the hundreds and thousands of people who do all the different things that help me with it. Whether it's just leaving me a review on iTunes, which by the way is super useful, or whether you subscribe to the show, or you just share out with your friends and family. Anything you do is super helpful. I'm not going to go through the list today. It's all on my website. If you head over to whatbitcoindid.com and you click on the support section, if you enjoy the show, you want to support it, and you can take a couple of minutes out and leave a review or anything like that, then please do. It helps me with everything I'm doing. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to try and squeeze in one more lightning interview this month, and then loads more things coming up next month. We've got Consensus coming up. I'm going to be doing a bunch of interviews over in America, and I've also got my ATM special coming. So yeah, going to be busy. If you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is hello@whatbitcoindid.com.